Thank you. Well, this year I'm giving a presentation called Second Destiny, Reawaken Your Life Purpose. And this is a workshop that's based on the work of Jean Houston, who's a wonderful, magical philosopher, teacher, wise woman, and I've had the great privilege of working with her for the past 5 years and learning some of her ways of working with consciousness and how to really shift ourselves internally, externally into what she would call the possible human. Mm-hmm. And these days she's been saying, look folks, we've lived through the good times. Now we're at the great times. And so the workshop that I'm doing is about that really on an individual level. How have I already done a lot of good in my life, and then what is waking up in me? What's the next level of my destiny? Where can I take it next? I've already done so much good stuff in the world, but there has to be more. There has to be a deeper level to who I am and what I'm doing. How do I use my capacities on a greater level than I have before? So we're going to do everything from work with our kinesthetic consciousness, waking up on a physical level, how can I access more of my being, to looking at some of the fractal patterns of our lives and to see how that is unfolding. Mm-hmm. So really tapping into what has always been true about me, what has always been the richest, deepest, truest part of my life from when I was a little tiny kid to all the way through where I am now. Mm-hmm. And so it might not mean that you're going to do anything different with your life. It just might mean that you do it with more spirit, with more energy, with more connectedness to collective purpose. Mm-hmm. It's a mystery unfolding. Right. Well, I feel that I myself am in this process right now. I've been doing work that I love for the past almost 30 years. I work with a process called voice dialogue, which has to do with increasing consciousness about the different aspects of ourselves and learning how to orchestrate beautifully the different aspects of personality. Jean Houston's work kind of dovetails with that because she teaches people to bring in more aspects than who they already know themselves to be, mm-hmm. to expand out with that. So I've been working with that almost on a daily level, and I'm amazed by the changes in myself. I find myself almost as if I've grown several feet and everything has changed in perspective as a result. Mm-hmm. So things that were big have become smaller. and so now I'm looking to see how do I scale up some of the work that I do so that it can have an effect on a wider level. And I've seen a number of people go through her programs and suddenly realize that they can do more than they ever imagined they could. And actually, when I first worked with Jean Houston back in 2006, I was just at the beginning of having to deal with an issue with the legislature. Never did anything like that before. And using what she taught me, all of a sudden I was able to turn a huge negative thing around and get it to go in a positive direction. It was a miracle. Well, voice dialogue falls into the category of what is called psycho-spiritual work. So, the psycho from psychology because it does have to do with personality, but spiritual because really it's a practice. Mm-hmm. It's a practice over and over again of becoming conscious of different parts of my personality and coming to a center place of balance between those different opposites inside myself, and learning that they belong to me rather than I belong to them. Mm-hmm. So I help people get out of what I call invasion of the body snatchers, or something. We say, oh, I don't know what came over me. And what comes over us are these different parts of who we are that are built on habit, that are unconscious. And Voice of Dialogue gives us a place of center from which energetically to find balance. It's a very body-centered work. Mm-hmm. It's a very energy-centered work. Right. It's not just a conceptual kind of thing. So Voice Dialogue especially helps people separate out from parts of themselves that are very primary and that have been running their lives. Mm-hmm. Jean Houston's work often invites new parts in. Oh, I see. So they really are helpful together because
they're both kinesthetic.
They're both kinesthetic, absolutely. They're both energetic also. Right. They both have to do with energy. Mm-hmm. So she would say, look, if you're stuck, you're trying to write a book and you're stuck. This is one of her things where she really had a block against writing. Yeah. And she's a wonderful cook. So she brought in her cook energy, and she looks at words as if they were food. So it's a lot of working with imagination. And, and the Voice Dialogue is very helpful with that. Mm-hmm. Because if we don't honor and respect the parts of us that have always controlled things, they'll just go, I'm not going to let you do this new imaginative stuff. There has to be a balance, a real balance, so that you don't just discard. We did one exercise that people came away from it saying, how long was that? That was only 5 minutes. It felt like 5 hours. Because it just, how when you really get into the moment, time expands.
I see.
So there's that kind of thing of being able to creatively play with time, play with space, play with energy. Mm-hmm. And then we become so much more creative, and new things are able to come in to our consciousness when we make ourselves open in that way. Right. Both women and men are conditioned in various ways. So we each have ways that we become unconscious that are typical for our gender. Mm-hmm. But I think for women, women often have a hard time getting hold of their first destiny. Really understanding that they're valuable and there's something really important they have to contribute. Mm-hmm. So I think this, especially for women, second destiny could come at any time. It doesn't mean that you have to be old. That you've already done a great deal and now you're ready for the new thing. But, so it could come much younger. We have now billionaires in their 20s who are saying, okay, what's next? Right. I've already done all that. But I think for women, as they get older, especially, to understand that now we have a certain amount of wisdom. Mm-hmm. And it is such a deep gift. Work together, people actually have to get together. And this is one of the things that Jean Houston has been stressing the entire time that she has been teaching, which is many, many years now. She's in her 70s and has been doing this for so many years in so many countries. And one of the things that she talks about is teaching learning communities, that we need to get together. Not so much the way we have gotten together in the past as women around our problems. We have all these support groups. And the support is always for challenges that we've come up against. Mm-hmm. We need support groups for our brilliance. We need support groups to support our creativity, to support our imagination together. So that's what she's talking about when she says teaching, learning, community, that each person in the community is a teacher, each one is a learner, there's no hierarchy to it. Once we wake this up inside ourselves, the more we reach out to each other, the more it becomes activated and available in the world. This is hard for women. We don't have a long history of having it be okay to shine, to really, not to brag and say, oh, I'm so fabulous and nobody else is as good as me, or something like that, but to really put forth our greatest creativity and celebrate together what we together share with the community. And we need to have that kind of support. You know, it doesn't have to be a big fancy thing. Even a few people getting together on a regular basis. People with their each individual imagination and inspiration, things get done. You know, books get written, projects happen, and it happens with less struggle and more celebration. So that's another thing that I've learned a lot in doing Jean's work, is the importance of celebration, of, you know, and celebration not as a concept, but all through our being, that we need to get up and dance, or it doesn't feel real.
Right.
You know, that our unconscious or our subconscious won't believe it if we're not genuine about it, if we don't have our life force into it. And we know that from doing rituals, you know, that rituals are so important because they involve all of our being.